We're being joined by Major General Emeka Onumajuru, who is the Chief of Defense Operation. Good morning, General. It's good to have you with us.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Just before we go into the conversation proper, I think that we can have a summary of the discussions that happened last week.
Africa faces existential threats from multifaceted security challenges, including armed political conflict, terrorism, militancy, sea piracy, and banditry. To combat these threats to regional peace and security on the continent, the chiefs of defense staff and representatives of the armed forces from 54 African countries converged on Abuja, Nigeria's capital, for the maiden African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. Vice President Kashim Shettima is representing President Bola Tinubu at the event, which also attracts former Nigeria security chiefs, past and present lawmakers, diplomats, and international development partners. The focus of the summit is on strengthening strategic defense collaboration.
The threats of today are no longer confined to conventional warfare. They are digital, asymmetric, and often invisible. The enemy is within. As chiefs of defense staff and heads of our armed forces, we must lead the charge in modernizing our forces, investing in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military technology, without which it will be difficult for us to achieve our security.
The ECOWAS Commission announces some interventions, including a 260,000 rapid deployment force.
While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and more particularly the Continental Standby Force, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region.
The keynote speaker is the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, and she says Africa is not a bystander in global security, as she calls for collaboration in digital security infrastructure.
We need the right tools and mapping in place to plan and to drive strategy at scale, reinforcing the Accra Initiative, the ECOWAS Standby Force, and giving the Joint Threat Fusion and Analysis Cell the support it needs to ensure data become decisions. The same applies at sea, joint patrols that make the Yaoundé architecture real protection for people and infrastructure. And innovation must be part of our defense, collaborating on AI from drones to cyber tools, and building on African Union's AI strategy can help us to set common standards to keep technology serving people.
She emphasizes strong institutions and democracy that focus on building the people.
We know that every additional year of schooling reduces the likelihood of a young person joining armed groups by up to 13%. This evidence begs the question, how do we invest in peace? Is it just military spending? Is it development spending? Is it both? That is the discussion that we will need to have in this room and beyond. And it means tackling root causes. It means democracy that is robust and representative, not on constitutional changes dressed up as solutions. While this might seem legitimate in many eyes, in the longer term, democracy and by extension security will be weakened. Instead, strong institutions underpinned by strong democracies and strong security apparatus are the safeguard against instability.
For Vice President Kashim Shettima, who is representing President Bola Tinubu at the event, Africa must stand united in fighting its common enemies.
What is true of our challenges must also be true of our resolve. We cannot neutralize these threats in isolation. This is the moment to reassess our military objectives in the collective aspirations to make Africa safe. It is time to forge a new doctrine of continental defense, one rooted in trust, shared intelligence, and coordinated strategy. Nigeria's promise has always been simple and firm: to be a good neighbor and a brother's keeper in the struggle for peace. Our armed forces have stood shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and far beyond in peacekeeping missions, counter-terrorism operations, and humanitarian endeavors. We hold no illusion. Security is the foundation upon which the edifice of progress must stand.
Over the next 3 days, 5 panel sessions are expected to hold with different speakers who will address different areas of security, including border management and regional security in Africa, the imperative of strategic defense collaboration in combating terrorism, as well as leveraging artificial intelligence for regional security in Africa. From the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center, Abuja, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Well, I did introduce our guest earlier. You're welcome once more to the program. And that video which we just played, that report which we just played, was the summary of the opening ceremony. Quite a number of people came there with their agenda, and quite a number of them, had expectations of the summit, some of which I'll expect you to delve into shortly. However, just before we get there, I'd like your quick reaction on the jailing of Simon Ekpa in Finnish court just yesterday. That news came in yesterday. We know that that's something that the CDS had, pursued. He said that they wanted the prosecution, if possible, the extradition of Simon Ekpa. So how does the, defense headquarters, how are they reacting to this piece of news?
I will start by first, as always, I want to commend our troops in the front line. I always like to use every opportunity to reassure them to keep on the hard work and good work they are doing. Now, going back to Simon Ekpa, I think the outcome is a strong, very strong statement of our resolve to bring all criminals to book. Wherever you may be, the arms of the law. It might take time, but it will definitely get to you. So it sends a signal to his cohorts back at home that if the arm of the law can reach him in faraway inland, then definitely if you are within our borders, the arms of the law will also catch up with you. And justice will always be served, no matter how late. So it's a very big win for all of us, for Nigerians, to bring him to book. At least that keeps him out of circulation for some time.
So that was the effort of the Nigerian government?
Yes, efforts of the Nigerian government, definitely, with the defense working under the Nigerian government. It's always
I just wanted to be sure that, because some people might just think, I know that there has been some conversation with the government of Finland, but, it's unclear if that was what resulted in the prosecution itself. Were we directly involved in any way?
Definitely, the government-to-government relation must have played its own part in terms of making sure that justice is served. So the support of the government of Nigeria, the interface of the government of Nigeria with the government of Finland can never be ruled out. That's a key part of it. And don't forget that initially, until the defense headquarters called him out, until the CDS called him out, it was like on a cruise. So calling him out will set out all the other conditions that made it possible for the outcome of what we just experienced.
Are you satisfied with how long he's been put away for? 6 years?
To me, it's a win-win. 6 years, even if it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it sends a statement. That statement that the arm of the law, that the Nigerian government have the reach, wherever you are, through collaboration with other countries to get at you, is a very powerful statement, which I'm very happy about.
Let's go to this summit, which has now come to an end, and the different agendas which people had come to the summit with. How much of it would you say was achieved at the end of the day?
The summit is a very bold and courageous effort by the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.J. Musa, to rally other African Chiefs of Defense Staff to start looking at developing regional strategy to deal with the challenges we face. And if you look at the sheer number of the participants, 37 countries, that's massive, and that points to the belief that they have that the conference is needed, it's at the right time, and it's something that will happen. Apart from the participants, even the resource persons, you have the Deputy Secretary General there, you have so many eminent personalities taking part. That again points to the value of the conference. Most of the objectives were met. What is important now is to follow up and implement.
So what exactly are we following up with? to implement?
Okay, now the conference had 4 key objectives. One was to develop collective strategies. Collective strategies in the sense that every country should be on the same wavelength in terms of ends, ways, and means. Ends, ways, and means. That is strategy. Secondly, collaboration efforts. It's one thing to agree on a strategy. It's another thing to have a work plan that ensures collaboration. For instance, you have maybe terrorists in, say, Benin Republic. They are pursued. They cross over to border to Nigeria and hide. Or maybe Nigeria is on the offensive, they go to Benin and hide. If there is no collaboration between both countries, it becomes difficult. The third issue is resourcing. No matter the amount of plans you have, no matter how good the strategy you have, if you're not resourced, you won't be able to do that. And most African countries have the same problem of lean resourcing in terms of security and defense. So the question is, how do you attract more funding? Of course, the governments have done the best they can do. So it's opinion that tapping into the resources available to the private sector could help out if clearly worked out. So that is also one of the key objectives. How do we get the private sector to participate in issues of defense and security through resourcing? And the last objective was to develop a roundtable, a homegrown roundtable that can look at African problems by Africans without any interference and trying to find solutions. That does not mean that we don't value strategic collaborations. We do. But we also believe that there should be a roundtable made up of chiefs of defense staffs only of African countries. Look at the issues they face critically, profile their solutions. Before now, you can think of strategic collaborations. So those were the 4 key objectives. And drawing from those objectives, we're able to look at 5 thematic areas that tend to address these themes. The first is border security. Can we be talking about security in Africa? We'll start looking at enhancing the security of the various borders, because the challenges we face are all transnational. If they are transnational, then there must be a little bit of enhanced security at the border areas. The second thing was counterterrorism efforts. That is the major problem we face in the continent. Terrorism in the Sahel, in the Lake Chad Basin, in Mozambique, in Somalia, Kenya areas, all over the place. So is it possible we'll have a much more elaborate and coordinated counterterrorism efforts that can be reviewed regularly based on how the threat mutates? And of course, the issue of resourcing. We talked about resourcing. How do we get more funds? Maritime security was also another key area. Most of our resources are offshore. How do you secure these maritime areas? We have piracy, we have illegal fishing, unreported, unregulated fishing. Now, if we can be able to have a much more secured maritime area, then our blue economy can thrive, not just for Nigeria, but for the entire Africa. So how do we make that happen? So a lot of decisions were taken along these key areas. So what requires now is to start following up on those decisions and see how they can be implemented. So those are the key areas you should be looking at.
Indeed, I hear you when you talk about collective strategy, collaboration, resourcing, and roundtable. Yes. But then there are those who have criticized this particular meeting. They think that generally that the challenges that a number of African countries face are internal, and that if our internal security apparatus were more, will I say, up to date, up to the beat, that perhaps this meeting would not have been necessary in the first instance.
Okay, I would disagree. First, on the challenges being internal. They are internal, or they are driven by external sources. The core challenges are transnational. Terrorism is a transnational issue. Proliferation of small arms and light weapons is transnational. Illegal migration and the extreme ideologies it brings is transnational. Funding, illegal funding of these activities are all transnational. It's absolutely impossible for a country, no matter how big you are, to be insulated and you have only internal challenges that do not have links to external challenges. That is absolutely not correct. Not in sub-Saharan Africa. Definitely not in sub-Saharan Africa.
Was this meeting just for sub-Saharan African defense chiefs?
No, it was for the entire African region. But of course, the core challenges in each sub-region was also highlighted. One of the outcomes of the meeting was an agreement to interface more with the AES countries, that is Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, because of the realization that most of the challenges in terms of terrorism are from that area.
Were they represented?
Sure. Niger was available. Mali was there, but Burkina Faso was not available.
How does that, the fact that they've broken away from ECOWAS, I heard the ECOWAS representative there speaking of creating the 5,000-man brigade, and clearly we knew where that was coming from, why ECOWAS had decided, was thinking about that, and also other uses that force could be deployed to, should the need arise. It might not just be security, it might also be in terms of restoring democracy in will I say, I don't want to use the word renegade countries, but for lack of a better phrase, how did they receive that particular submission from ECOWAS being present at that summit?
Well, first, we need to get the framework right. It wasn't an ECOWAS summit.
Indeed.
If it was an ECOWAS summit, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't be there. It's a summit driven by the Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria. So now it's more of a bilateral issue, but of course using a multilateral framework. So that was why they were there. Now, ECOWAS have come to the realization that, yes, while these three countries are out of the sub-region, it's still important that we continue to engage them. Very important. And I think that the Commissioner for Peace and Security was clear on that the door is still open. We'll continue to engage them because of the understanding that to address the security problem, it must involve addressing the issues in the Sahel. As long as the Sahel is vulnerable, it's just a question of time before they come to the southern coast. And the upsurge in the challenges we have in the northeast is because of the influx of terrorists from the Sahel. So it's important that the issue in Sahel is addressed jointly. If it's not addressed jointly, then the spillover will get to other countries.
I know my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Over now to you, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. Well, General, the issue you just raised now about, dealing with certain things in the Sahel, and all of that raised this question on my mind, connecting it to something that the CDS also said about border management and regional security. So the straight question there is communities. How do we engage communities in a way that they can co-own this process with us? I'm saying that at the behest of the uproar that came from all the conversation that Mr. El-Rufai put out, and the denials and counter-denials that have followed that, bandits are being paid, the state governments are having conversations with certain bandits at some levels. Are we having conversations with communities in the area of this border management and regional, security that we're talking about?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the key outcomes of the CDS conference is that border communities should be seen as a developmental zone. Border communities must be recognized as a developmental zone in the sense that without developing border communities, without carrying them on board, like you clearly observe, there is little chance of enhancing border security. How I wish you can have access to the signed communique. You will see what I'm telling you in black and white, that the conference did recognize the important roles that border communities will play. And it's of the view that it should not just be policed, the border zone should be developed. If they are developed, if the locals are part of the process, then the chances of success is much higher. Now, having said that, I think the question will be, how do we implement this? How do we ensure that the border communities are co-owners of the process? How do we ensure that the border communities are developed? I know back here at home there are agencies meant to look at how to develop border communities. How do we get those agencies functioning? So as long as the border communities do not feel that they have a stake in the process, then our chances are much low. But if we're on the right track by ensuring that, first, they are enlightened, they have the necessary socio-economic amenities they need to function, we'll win them over, then our chances are much more higher. So I do agree that border communities have a key role to play in this entire process.
Well, still on that same issue, General, I know that the CDS himself had spoken quite some time about the role that state governments have to play in this whole security thing, and that the military can only do its part, play its part, and that the state governments have to play their part as well. Do you think that that collaboration is happening? Here is why I'm asking. Not just in Kaduna. We have heard of some other state governments. I mean, Malquez said it in our conversation earlier. Some state governments decided to adopt the idea of paying bandits just to ensure that there is peace in their communities. I'm almost certain that that is not what the Nigerian army would want, because it would be like there is partnership with these, bandits, a kind of enabling situation. So do you think we have that kind of conversation, particularly with state governments, to ensure that there is understanding of the risks of the actions that are taken and how some of those actions undermine what the military is doing? We also highlighted earlier that the Kaduna State, for instance, has a peace pact with bandits. That's the way it is in the statement of the governor of the state.
Yes, thank you very much. I think first I'll look at it from a broader perspective. In the first instance, do the armed forces cooperate, dialogue with state governments in terms of ensuring security in the various states? I think the answer is yes. We work with state governments. Now, going deeper into the specifics of paying bandits or not, that definitely the armed forces is not involved in that. There is a national DDR program that is anchored around Operation Safe Corridor. Now we'll have two of those in the northeast, situated in Gombe, in the northwest, situated in Southeast Zamfara State. Now, the essence of these national frameworks is for bandits who clearly want another route to living criminality. Your hands-ups, you surrender your weapons, you're profiled in detail. Those that are found really culpable face the law. Now, this is coordinated by the Ministry of Justice. Those that are found not to be very culpable, don't forget that some of the people were forcefully conscripted, kept in the bush for God knows how. Now, once it is decided that this set of people are not really culpable after a detailed profiling, those people are transferred to the DDR centers in Gombe, Malam City, and they start going through the DDR process. The Armed Forces of Nigeria does not support the payment of money to criminal groups. The Armed Forces of Nigeria is not part of that arrangement. However, the Armed Forces of Nigeria have a DDR program with other stakeholders, Ministry of Justice, Office of National Security Advisor, for criminals that have shown remorse and want to toe the line for peace, to surrender their weapons, undergo a thorough profiling to ensure the extent of their culpability, and then they are transferred for the DDR program.
So, General, lastly, from my side, what would you advise the state governments that are in this practice, or those who may be considering it? The argument that they have is they want to do everything they can to protect the lives and property of their people. And we have had even local governments having this kind of conversation with bandits, so to speak. What would you advise? Since the military, as you said, is not part of it, what would you advise?
I think what I would advise is that from previous experience, believe you me, it does not work. It does not work. It's just a question of time before they come back. I remember this have been tried by the same states you're talking about in Katsina before now, several years back. It doesn't really work. So that is why the military is focused on the kinetic aspects of the operation and then keeping the non-kinetic open, which is through the national DDR framework.
Well, right now, this summit has come to an end. We still have the challenges that we have with us. In the coming days, what can Nigerians look to see as the outcome from the summit, which will be implemented? As you have said, implementation is where you're looking to, and how it's going to translate in improving the security situation in our country?
Yes, first, I must state that the outcomes of the conference, it's not that they are entirely new. Some of them are already being done. But what the conference have done now is to increase the intensity. For instance, when we talk about joint training, for instance, we'll do that. We'll offer a lot of training slots to neighboring countries to come train in our strategic institutions like the National Defense College. In terms of joint operation, yes, the multinational joint task force is there. But what the chiefs of defense staff have said is that the commitment, the interoperability must be more, and they are ready to devote much more resources to these areas. And a key benefit is the increased military-to-military interface. Military-to-military interface.
Some people think that should be domiciled in your office, though, operations.
Yes, but don't forget we have also a department, policy and plans, that is in charge of defense diplomacy and military contacts in conjunction with the operations.
So we'll be seeing a lot more collaboration in that regard. A lot more
collaboration in that regard.
Well, we have to thank you. We'll be looking forward to it. We are looking forward to an improvement of the security situation in our country as we commend the men and officers of our military services. Thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Major General Emeka Onumajuru is the Chief of Defense Operation and has been speaking to us on the outcome of the Africa Chief of Defense Summit. Thank you once more.
Thank you.